Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another webinar of Casually Speaking. I'm Robert Kienzle with Nomium Consulting, as well as our nonprofit, The Giving Speech. I'm joined today by Patrick Davis of Soap Cycling. He's the general manager. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Soap Cycling and what you guys do?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Bob. Soap Cycling was founded 5 years ago by students at the University of Hong Kong. The reason that they founded it was because they have very little opportunity to work or get hands-on experience with real businesses as students. Myself, I'm from the US. I've been working pretty much since I was 14, flipping burgers, doing construction, but here in Asia, and in Hong Kong especially, lots of kids don't work until they graduate from college. So Soap Cycling was founded as a way to give undergraduate students an opportunity to work. Very simple, we collect soap from hotels around Asia, we reprocess it with the help of volunteers. Then we ship it to places that lack sanitation and hygiene resources, such as the Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, and China.
Awesome, good work. Yes, and I've seen their excellent operation and warehouse, and it's a very, very good cause, and we'll put a link to Soap Cycling in the comments of this video. So we have sourced 6 different questions from Asia and around the globe on our social media. We do this with almost all of our webinars, so if there's a topic that you're interested in, or there's a question on a topic that you're interested in, let us know, and we'd be happy to include it in a future production. So we're going to start off with a question from Kevin Lahey in Toronto, Canada. He works with Mercy for Animals, and all of our questions today come from people who are in nonprofits or who have been in nonprofits. Kevin says, what's the most effective way to fundraise when only a small percentage of the population cares about a given issue? Also, how do you convince them that their money is making a difference? Now, I think I'll start on a larger scale. One of the things we've seen, especially in recent years online, is that logic does not persuade people unless they already agree with you or they're already open-minded to listening to you. Actually, in the influence program that we run with a lot of different nonprofits here in Asia, we discuss the fact that when somebody comes to someone else with a new idea and they go a very persuasive delivery. So for example, the facts and the statistics and the reasons why we should do this in a logical way, it actually leads to a lot of resistance and it turns a lot of people off. So we recommend inspiring them, talking about the vision, talking about a better future, talking about shared goals, and get them to agree with that, or at least be open-minded enough to listen to the other facts and statistics later. Yes, you need the facts and statistics and logical reasoning, but don't start with that. Now that's on a very big, persuasive communication level. Pat, in your experience, what are some specific things that you've seen work?
I totally agree with you, Bob. The storytelling is always very important. Stats often turn people off. I would say, a small segment isn't a bad thing. Targeting. Sometimes you want to, knowing your niche kind of audience is very important. Technology is a key role in that as well. Using CRM like Salesforce or MailChimp or social media is a good way to target that audience and find exactly who is passionate about your cause. Sometimes having the small slice isn't always a bad thing because it's there, you can find it. Whereas a huge audience is hard to pinpoint exactly where the passion is. So I just say use technology and then kind of find those people who are passionate about your cause. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, let's move on. Our next question comes from Patricia Kienzle in Arkansas, who works with the Lee Street Community Center. Excellent last name, Patricia. Patricia asks, what are your suggestions for raising funds for a nonprofit in the poorest part of the state, but trying to fundraise from people in the richest part of the state? Also, what do you do if there's no public relation funds, there's no well-known or famous people promoting this nonprofit, there's really no places to attract donors? Now, I know in Soap Cycling, you've mentioned working with people in Hong Kong, but often doing good works for people in other countries. How does that work in Soap Cycling?
All right, Kienzle, isn't that your last name, Bob?
It is. Yeah, it's a strange coincidence.
Right.
Yeah, I'm also from Arkansas. It's who knew?
Small world. I do. I face that struggle because again, I ship most of my soap outside of Hong Kong. That's reprocessed, and people in Hong Kong, of course, they care about Hong Kong people, mostly the elderly and kids. And Hong Kong has real social problems that need to be addressed. My sort of suggestions for dealing with that is, if you can't be sort of on the ground where the impact is happening, try to focus on other tangential ways you can show what you're doing. For instance, with soap cycling, we have the students. So every semester I recruit a group of students from HKU and they run the organization, so I can show lots of great content with them kind of learning and becoming leaders. And Hong Kong people care about that sort of thing, local kids developing themselves. I would say another kind of, I don't want to go back to technology, but if you don't have any famous people to kind of promote your brand, then you should become famous yourself by doing some kind of weird stunt on YouTube or something.
Yes, just jumping off of bridges and whatnot.
Yeah, water bucket challenge. I mean, there's other things you can just be creative, yeah.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And talking a little bit about technology,
right.
You know, we can fundraise face-to-face, we can fundraise in events, but we can also just fundraise online. And that's where a lot of business is happening. We don't even need to be face-to-face anymore. So take a look at any websites that you might have. Are they streamlined? And going back to what I said in the first question, don't try to persuade with the facts and the figures first. Show people the images and the pictures of the people who need help. Show them pictures and images of progress being made, and let that stand out on the front page with links to either donate or volunteer time or supplies or whatever you need. Now, if there's a lot of stories and there's a lot of text and background and the facts and the statistics and all of that, that's great, but let that be something people can dig through later on their own. What they really should see up front should be very quick to understand and very quick to understand what action is needed. In terms of not having PR funds, you've mentioned before that soap cycling doesn't have part of the budget reserved, for public relations. Other nonprofits do. And if you take a look at what percentage of other more, not necessarily famous, but what established nonprofits have done with what type of budgets and what do they put back into marketing, what do they put out, how much do they put into outreach? Take a look at that and see if your nonprofit could possibly find that budget through donations or through other sponsors. Yeah,
I would say again, think of yourself like a startup. I mean, what business has a marketing or PR budget? Most don't. If you're starting up, so you have to be creative. Shared value. All nonprofits will talk about shared value. What are some assets that you can use from sponsors that can help you get your word out? How can you leverage other people's networks to get the word out more so than through traditional kind of PR marketing? Because nonprofits aren't going to have that type of money usually.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Small nonprofit.
Absolutely. One of the things that, from a personal story, I used to work in an organization called Clean Water Action when I lived in the United States. And our next question is actually from Liz Parker in Colorado, who I used to work with in Clean Water Action. We'll get to Liz's question in just a second. When we would do face-to-face fundraising, we would have to maximize our support wherever we could find it. And we could end up raising, for example, one person could raise maybe $200 a night face-to-face with people. That might be from having 100 people give $2 on average in maybe a poorer neighborhood. But we made this sense of community where, hey, everybody's doing this, everybody's giving whatever, even if the change is sitting on your coffee table. And we went to other neighborhoods where we met a lot of people who said, no, or I'm very particular about who I give, my budget for the year of giving is over. But when we found that one person, we were able to maximize their donations through letting them know we are looking for the key people in this region or in this neighborhood, and they might write us that $200 check. So you never know where it's going to come from, how much, how little, but definitely you should be able to be turning, in a well-functioning nonprofit, about 20 to 25% of people you interact with, turning them into some kind of donor, whether it's time, money, effort, supplies, donations. All right. On to Liz Parker from Colorado. She says staff retention is often an issue. How do you keep staff motivated and passionate? When I talked about these questions with Pat a few minutes ago before we started this video, we both said pay them.
I said the meetings will continue until morale is
yes. But I know with volunteers that's even harder, because if it's staff and you're paying them, there's high turnover. But what about volunteers? They're not making anything by being there. What tips, or maybe not tips or tricks, but what best practices have you seen?
For soap cycling, we have about 3,000 volunteers cycle through a year. And then you always have a question kind of what type of volunteers. So try to segment perhaps the people who are working with you. Are they from corporates? Are they from students, schools? Are they retired, elderly? So you have different kind of people have different needs in different parts of their life. Another group is kind of your stakeholder group. Board members, people who give you time, repeatedly. So how can you give them, show them appreciation? One is shared value, again, so getting corporates or perhaps other sponsors to give you free things that you can give out to your sponsors and friends. And another way, of course, for the millennials is recognition. So create like maybe a Facebook or Instagram frames you can give them to say, they're a supporter, or get some kind of like campaign to revolve around. Most young people today volunteer maybe more for recognition, to show off what they're doing, more so than the past. Whereas most elderly, they probably just want to engage and do something, kind of show off their skills and be a part of something. So yeah, you have to think about different groups and how they like to be motivated.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of people will do something just for their resume. I mean, of course, they want to help the world, but what are they going to do? How is it going to help them professionally in the future? Make sure you're giving them those opportunities, whether it's recognition within that organization, recognition online, something they could put on their LinkedIn, write letters of recommendation, and if possible, when there's larger events and there are donors and there's other people from the public, be sure to recognize them for the broader world. So yeah, great. We have a few links. I'll put these in the comments, but there's a link from an organization called Top Nonprofits. There's an article about the 5 keys to total volunteer success that goes a little bit deeper into that. We'll link that in the comments. All right, question number 4 comes from Jade To from her fund here in Hong Kong. She says, are there any recommendations for small organizations if they're facing leadership transition? Sometimes small organizations led by 1 or 2 core members will change, 1 or 2 of those core members will leave, and then some of the supporters or funders might also drop out. Now, I think on a larger scale, we have to take a look, at each organization and say, is the public, the donors, the funders, are they being shown the organization, or are they being shown the leadership as a brand? Is really a difference between I'm donating because I know you, or I'm donating because I believe in your organization. And if you think that just 1 or 2 key people are really the face, what could those 1 or 2 people do before they leave to really build that brand and to build the trust in the current or incoming leadership team? And if you're asking that question, it's good to think about, because it's really never too early to start on that and really analyze what could we do in terms of our exposure to the greater community.
Try to broaden your leadership base. It's always traumatic when a founder leaves. Same thing in a small company as nonprofits. And the egos are involved, personalities are involved, they clash sometimes. The reality is a lot of people give money because they have personal connections. Like if you're trying to raise money for people you know are going to give you money more so than people you don't know. So you just kind of have to be flexible. Maybe sometimes your mission, sometimes with your stakeholder base, try to broaden it as much as possible, diffuse responsibility among different people, empower them before they leave. I went through this a couple times back home with kind of co-ops I was involved with. It's always traumatic. It's just something you have to kind of prepare for. You can never start early enough to prepare for and spread the responsibility.
Awesome. And again, a couple links for that one. One's from the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and another one's from the Bridgespan Group. We'll, again, put those in the comments. All right, 2 more questions to go. The question number 5 comes from Toomey from Hands On Hong Kong. Sue says, what recommendations do you have for staying closely on mission while at the same time being flexible for your funders?
I know Sue Toomey, so I kind of a bit circumspect in answering. It's a great problem to have if people are offering you money to betray your ideals. However, I think it's a negotiation. You always want to try and please your funders. Think about your other stakeholders. How would they feel perhaps if you betrayed a certain, or if they were seen to, or if you were seen to betray a certain ideal? Maybe you can give them something else if you're not willing to give them what they're asking for. Try to be firm in some ways, soft in others. Try to play them off. That's a difficult question. I can't really answer because I've never really been in that situation.
Yeah, it is really difficult. And I think we almost have to step back and take a look at a larger picture of just negotiations.
Right.
If you have an organization and you have a donor and they want different things, whether the donor wants their name on publicity or on websites or in an event, but other donors didn't get that, is this an issue of special treatment? Is where can we bend the rules? Where can we be flexible? Where can we meet in the middle? And unfortunately, we can't win them all. But if we take a look at what can you give, what can I give, and find a place to meet in the middle, or even, in a more realistic way, what are some new solutions we haven't thought of?
Right. Be creative.
Be creative. If we've had an event in the past and we don't list our donors, but they want to be listed, okay, well, let's forget for a moment this event and listing of a name, and see if there's a third, fourth, or even a fifth route we could agree on to make it mutually beneficial.
I'd say make like perspective. If you think this donor, if you do bend your ideals or your mission a bit now, they can fund you and support you for years to come. Think about all the good that could do, and you can kind of make up for perhaps compromising a bit. If you think it's just a one-off and you're going to compromise and they're just going to take off the next year, they're not going to fund you anymore. Just kind of judge the relationship and kind of how deep you think the kind of commitment to your ideals are.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's a really big change, don't be afraid to put things in writing. Get an agreement. Look, we're going to change the way we do this for you, and we want to work with you, but we will need a commitment for the next 3 years.
Try to be transparent as possible with your stakeholder group so nobody gets the wrong idea.
Absolutely.
Get some feedback as well, perhaps. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, and our final question today comes from Heron Holloway at Habitat for Humanity here in Hong Kong. Heron says, is being a leader the same in the nonprofit sector as it is in the for-profit sector, and do you need different leadership skills?
Right. I'm from Atlanta, so I'm very familiar with Habitat, and I volunteer with them here in Hong Kong. It's a great organization. I have never been in charge of an organization that's not a nonprofit, so it's a bit hard to say. I would say, in my mind, running a for-profit business is a bit easier in that you have one clear goal, which is to make money. Also, the people working for you all work for you, so there's no kind of conflict of interest. If they don't do what you say, you can fire them. Of course, there's other challenges in motivating and retaining people. For a nonprofit, you're always pulled in different directions. You have your mission, you have your stakeholders, you have your funders, you have your volunteers, employees, yourself. I work 7 days a week. I work pretty much every day, all day. So you need a lot of the same skills, but I think the skill set's definitely a bit different. You have to be committed, and you have to just kind of get the job done with the least amount of resources possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Creative, yeah.
And that goes into budgeting, and we do in the Giving Speech, our nonprofit sector of Nomium, we do complimentary training for nonprofits around Asia because we know they don't have a budget for training. It isn't there. And some of the donors would get mad if it was there. They'd say, wait, this isn't going directly to the cause. Well, it's going to building a better organization for long-term benefits. But if the budget just isn't there, what can the leaders do if they don't have somebody to come do free training? How are they going to become that trainer themselves and balance all of their other duties? There's an article. The last article we'll link is from Forbes, and it's called "Why You Should Run Your Business Like a Nonprofit." And it brings up some of these aspects. Nonprofits are so careful with what they do with their money internally, and they have to be very creative, and they sometimes even need more leadership to influence volunteers when they're not paying them a paycheck. So there's a lot of things that
each sector can learn from the other.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mission, having a strong mission, a social mission, perhaps, as a lot of companies do,
Mm-hmm.
Google or Amazon or something, beyond just the profit making, which is quite common these days.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's kind of merging between the two of it.
Great. Well, I would like to thank everybody online for asking these questions who participated in this, and everybody else watching. We hope you've enjoyed it. If there are additional questions about communicating in nonprofits, feel free putting them in the comments wherever you're watching this video. We will have some future episodes, as I mentioned, so if there's a topic related to business communication, leadership, persuasion that you would like us to cover in the future, let us know. Also, I mentioned the Giving Speech does pro bono free training for qualified nonprofits around Asia. We would love to work with you. Send us a message, send us an email, and we will work something out to get you, your staff, and your volunteers better at communicating, and hopefully better at not only doing their work, but having more enjoyment from it. Would you like to discuss anything going on with Soap Cycling?
Soap Cycling has just launched a crowdfunding initiative to fund a new program. We're starting an elderly work program here in Hong Kong. That goes back to one of the topics of how to create impact in your kind of home base where you do a lot of your fundraising and marketing, yet where a lot of things get shipped overseas and have impact elsewhere. So we're creating this work program for a lot of neglected marginalized groups in our neighborhood, the disabled, the elderly, minority youth, as a way to kind of create impact and create some visible impact in our own backyard, way to energize different groups, and we think could have a lot, tremendous deal of impact here in Hong Kong as well. So we have the crowdfunding. It's on our Facebook page, on our website. So yeah, let's go to soapcycling.org if you'd like to learn more about it.
Great. We'll link that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching.
Merry Christmas.